Con-Spira-Series.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Now I want you all to imagine just for 1 second, because I saw the Vice documentary about Chris Benoit, and I understand a lot of people come out of that saying Chris Benoit absolutely killed his family. I also understand that you don't have any real proof to back up those claims. So I want you to imagine for 1 second that you're a loving, hardworking family man or woman, and suddenly the legacy you worked your entire life to build, it's basically just shattered just like that. And how do you handle a case where you don't have video surveillance, video footage, video proof? You take the interviews that you've heard, you listen for contradictions, you spot and you hear things that just do not make sense. You try to discredit these things, but instead all I see are a lot of people blindly believing and just following along with Dr. Benoit, with Chief Medical Examiner Chris Sperry, with District Attorney Scott Ballard, who was so back and forth on everything. He went from, well, Daniel had needle marks. Rumor has it Daniel was dwarfed. He was way too small for his size. Oh, then there was the talk about Fragile X. You have all these things, but people just chalk it up to, well, coincidence. I'm sorry, but you don't have that much coincidence in a situation like this. You just don't. Then you add the cherry on top that Chris was very concerned someone was out to get him, but people use steroids. Oh, well, he was just on steroids. Ah, yeah, that's what it was. Or maybe, just maybe, it's the fact that all his friends were starting to die. We're just starting to pop up dead, like, for example, Eddie Guerrero. This is where a lot of people claim Chris Benoit really went to the dark side. And by dark side, what they mean is he wailed and he cried and he was visibly upset, losing his best friend. Never mind the fact that Batista did the same thing. Never mind the fact that Triple H did the same thing. Never mind the facts. Let's just look at something that happened where a lot of other people were doing a similar thing and come to the conclusion that means Chris Benoit killed his wife. What a joke. The reality is, Eddie Guerrero did die in 2005. Comes up, and there's actually controversy there too, if you want to be honest. If we're being honest with ourselves, there is controversy with the Eddie Guerrero thing. We're going to get to that. But before we do, I think that it's very fitting we go back and look at WrestleMania 20, and we look at the last image that everybody saw before it went off the air. If you watched it live, this was the last image you saw. Notice that Chris Benoit, the World Heavyweight Champion, the same title that he won his last day in WCW. And trust me, I'll get to that even more as well as we go on with this series. Eddie Guerrero, your WWE champion. This was such an emotional thing to watch. Two best friends who worked their entire lives to get to this moment, and they break down and cry in the ring as they're embracing, and then they celebrate. It's like, how can you not root for this? And then you start to realize, looking back now, maybe they're flaunting it in your face. Oh yeah, finally they made it. But, as we all know, there's always a but. Just a couple of months after this, we have to address the obvious thing here. And that's when there was a 6-man tag on SmackDown. All right, guys. So I'm editing this here in 2021. The video was originally recorded in May of 2020, so a year ago. This is May 23rd, 2020. And I cannot show you the footage of the six-man tag, but any true wrestling fan will know what I'm talking about. It's the six-man tag where Eddie Guerrero collapsed in the ring, and basically JBO tags in, rushes over, covers Guerrero. 1, 2, 3. The referee counts real quick. Now, it's not necessarily just the fact that WWE was broadcasting on air a couple of months after WrestleMania. Well, literally, yeah, about a couple of months, almost 2 months after WrestleMania 20. They're literally broadcasting to you Eddie collapsing in the ring face first, much like what they say happened to him in the hotel. He fell face first, was face down of a heart attack, and this is pretty much what they are displaying on their show back in the day, SmackDown, which they still have. This is what they're showing their audience, is that basically Eddie Guerrero is dying in the ring. Is what it looks like. I mean, anybody that recalls that, that's what, for me, I personally thought it was real for the longest time. But the fact that it isn't real, the fact that during that match, you get to hear Bubba Ray tell Devon, oh, get over there by John, basically, so he could tag you in, that lets me know it's all scripted. So they scripted Eddie Guerrero collapsing in the ring. They scripted this whole thing a year and a half before Eddie actually dies. Yeah, that's very, very suspicious looking, in my opinion. And don't get it twisted. There are people out there, especially, people that are rich, people that are used to getting away with things. Look at Vince McMahon, for example, his history in the courtroom. He's used to screwing people over. He's used to beating the government. He's used to winning these court cases and getting away with the things that he has done. The lawsuits people try to bring upon him, he's used to winning those. So when you get used to, breaking the law and winning in court, it becomes to a point to where maybe you think you're untouchable. And that's what we need to keep in mind. I truly believe Vince McMahon has the ego that he believes he's untouchable, he's invincible. And later on in this series, I will show and I will prove a specific wrestler that has information or had information that Vince McMahon would try to have wrestlers hurt. So I'm not just making this stuff up. These are facts from other people that you could have if you had a trial and you actually investigated the Benoit case and pointed out the inconsistencies and pointed out the flaws and how WWE was basically putting these things in your face, like with Eddie Guerrero. But I want to get to another interesting point as it relates to this Eddie Guerrero thing where he collapsed in the ring. I want to look at the date when they had this happen, because these dates are very important. And a lot of times you'll look and find the dates that they have these things happen are 2 to 3 days, maybe even less, sometimes maybe the day of something important. And that's what we're going to look at right now. So there you see Eddie Guerrero collapse. Thursday Night SmackDown, May 20th, 2004. May 20th, 2004. There's the third one, May 20th, 2004. And as you see right here, I'm looking up Chris Benoit. Christopher Michael Benoit was a Canadian professional wrestler during his 22-year career. And then down here you see when he was born was May 21st, 1967. So indeed it was one day before Benoit's 37th birthday that they were playing a storyline on WWE SmackDown of Eddie Guerrero having a heart attack. As a matter of fact, what we'll do now is we'll go to WrestleMania. They did a video on this. And it's about how in SmackDown vs. Raw 2006, well, you'll see.
Talk about bad timing. Back in the glory days of wrestling game story modes, the scripts were often completely original in comparison to what was being shown on actual television. This is part of the reason that fans fell in love with them so much, as it didn't feel like a rehash of watching Raw or SmackDown. Instead, you could get your own news stories to play out. Well, unfortunately, this had ended up backfiring on the developers on a couple of occasions, and both of them have involved The Undertaker, strangely enough. The first example comes from SmackDown vs. Raw 2006, where as gamers were playing through the season mode, they would come across a story where the dead man was feuding with Latino Heat Eddie Guerrero. In-game, the feud culminated with Taker chokeslamming Latino Heat into a casket, which is pretty standard for a WWE storyline, right? Well, unfortunately that year's SmackDown vs. Raw's release came just a few months after the untimely death of Eddie Guerrero, so playing through it looked tasteless to say the least.
You got to admit, that's pretty creepy. I mean, that's pretty crazy. That the video game, and they didn't really tell you the day the video game was released. WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2006 is a professional wrestling video game released on the PlayStation 2 console and the PlayStation Portable Handheld console by THQ and developed by Ukes. Now, the initial release date, as you should see right here, is November 11th, 2005. What do you know? November 13th, 2005. 2 days after this game was released, Eddie Guerrero is dead. 2 days. What I do think is a little odd about all this is the two things I've mentioned here with the storyline and then the video game. Then I think what we need to go to next is Chavo's recount of what actually happened the night before Eddie died, and then the morning Eddie died.
We get to Minneapolis, and we go to check in at one of the Marriott.
Yeah, the one by the airport.
By the Target Center. No, one by the Target Center.
Oh, okay.
That everybody was staying at. So we go there, and, and I was like, hey, man, we used to room together, all the time. And we decided, hey, we'll just get our own rooms. Okay, no problem. So we're checking in, and as we're there, we see Michael Hayes. Michael Hayes comes up to us, and he's not Michael Hayes anymore. He's Freebird. He's the Freebird. He's been drinking and hanging out.
He's the beer wolf.
Yeah. And he kind of mad dogs Eddie, And I didn't really notice it, but Eddie,
what do you mean, mad dogs?
He kind of stared him down.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Stared him down, but I didn't really notice it. And Eddie didn't. Eddie, after Michael leaves, goes back to the bar. Eddie stops and looks at me and goes, "Did you see what that mofo did?" So what do you mean? Yeah, he's staring at me. I'm like staring at you? Like, he's like, yeah. Eddie's pissed, and I said, all right, what do you want to do? You want to go beat him up? Because we were just, if he's going to get in a fight, I'm going to get in a fight, and vice versa. So he's like, nah, we'll give him a pass. I said, okay. So we literally gave him a pass. So the night before Eddie died, really, Michael Hayes didn't know how close he was to getting beat up. Literally, we were going to go in there and drag him out and beat him up. So we said, okay, hey, man, well, let's, why don't we, go work out in the morning? And just as we got there, we see Chris Benoit. And Benoit goes, hey, man, what's up, guys? Hey, we're going to bed, but we're going to train 8 a.m. Let's meet down for breakfast, 8 a.m. We'll go train before the show. We always did. And then we're going to go to Target Center. Okay, great, no problem. So I go to my room. Eddie goes to his room. Well, then I get a call from Eddie, my cell phone. He says, hey, man, can I talk to you? And I say, yeah, what's going on, man? And he goes, I just really got to talk to you. I said, okay, hold on. Let me run downstairs real quick. Let me take care of some stuff downstairs. I don't know if I was, getting an extra key or whatever I was doing. So I went downstairs, and then I call Eddie to his room, 8 minutes later, and I go, hey, man, you want to talk? And he goes, nah, I'm okay. I'm cool. And I said, are you sure? Let's talk. And he goes, nah, I'm cool, man. I'm okay. I'm here. He's like, no, I'm good. I said, all right, man, well, I'll see you in the morning. We'll go work out. Okay, cool, no problem. I think I had a beer, then went to bed. I was going to wake up and go work out. And at 7 a.m., I got a call from one of the security guards in the hotel.
Now, I want to stop it right here. I want to show you an article about what the hotel said when Eddie Guerrero missed his wake-up calls. And around the time he missed the wake-up calls, the time he was supposed to get a wake-up call, because this really puts a hole in the story. WWE superstar Eduardo "Gory" Guerrero, better known in the wrestling world simply as Eddie, was found dead Sunday morning in his hotel room in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Guerrero, a former WWE champion and a regular mainstay on UPN's Friday Night SmackDown, was in town to compete in a championship match for a taped WWE Super Show. Now, don't forget, Eddie Guerrero was slated to win the world title in said match. But basically to air on television later this week. He was 38. After failing to respond to a 7 a.m. wake-up call, hotel security at the Minneapolis Marriott City Center accompanied Eddie's nephew and fellow WWE performer Chavo Guerrero Jr. in trying to establish contact with Eddie. Following a series of unsuccessful phone calls and knocks on his hotel room door, they finally forced their way into the room, only to find Eddie's body lying on the floor.
Chavo, yeah, hey, this is security in the hotel. I'm like, all right, well, why are you calling me? Because, well, your uncle is, I don't know how he knew we were there, or I was there. He wasn't there last night. I guess the word got around, whatever, and he goes, your uncle's passed out. I said, passed out? He goes, yeah, he's passed out in the bathroom. And I'm thinking, the bathroom? We had just talked on the plane that Eddie was sober for 4 years. So I was like, passed out? Did he have a relapse? Oh, no, come on, really?
But also, how would the guy know it's 7 in the morning?
I was like, how? So he's passed out in the bathroom. I think he's passed out in the bathroom, in the lobby,
lobby
or something like that. So I go, okay, I'll be right down. And the security guard goes, no, I'll come to your room. So he comes up to my room, and he comes and gets me. I'm still half out of it, and we got in late the night before. So I'm coming down. And he takes me to Eddie's room. I said, what do you mean his room? So I guess he explained to me that Eddie had missed a couple wake-up calls.
Yeah.
So they went to knock on his door, and the latch was on his door. Well, so whenever that happens, they're knocking, no answer. They cut the latch off. So as I open up, the latch is already cut off, and I walk in, and I see Eddie face down in the bathroom. He's face down, just like, and I looked at him kind of like, still thinking, well, wait a minute, I'm still coming to my senses. And I'd seen Eddie passed out from, drinking or pills or whatever it was, 20 times in my life.
Right.
But of course, this was years and years before. So when I looked at him, I'm like, anybody else, if I would have seen, just any random person, I'd be like, you're passed out, what the heck, let me get him up. So
All right, so yeah, that kind of presents a little bit of a problem for me. Because again, Chavo says at 7 a.m. they called him, said they had called Eddie Guerrero multiple times to wake him up for his wake-up call. They had already went up to the room, cut the latch on the door, which means that the security guard would have went in the room. How else would he have known Eddie was laying face down in the bathroom? How much time was wasted here? How much time was spent here doing all of that? Making the phone call for a 7 a.m. wake-up call. How much time was spent going up to the room or going to the room? And how much time was spent cutting the latch on the door, going in, finding the dead body, or what they didn't know would be the dead body apparently, then to go back to the lobby and call Chavo of all people? Why are you not calling 911? So I take it back to the security. Goes into that room. You see a man laying face down. You see he's most likely not moving. And instead of calling 911, you run to call somebody's fucking nephew. So ultimately, as Chavo will go on to explain, he goes into the room, sees Eddie down.
See Eddie's down. I'm like, okay, let me assess the situation. What's going on? So I put my hand by his nose, and there's no breath, but I hear a couple gurgling noises, and then I go, this isn't right. I'm feeling him. He's warm. He's warm. He's not like, I'm like, okay, this isn't right. Just pull him out. So I talked to the security guard, and we pull him out and turn him around. And so as soon as I see his face, when we turn around, I said, I start panicking. Okay, this really isn't right. Call 911 now. And so they're calling, 911, and we're giving them, mouth to mouth, CPR, and I'm freaking out. I'm yelling at him, going, Eddie, stay with me, come on, Eddie, come on.
Basically, you think he was still alive?
He was still alive because he was warm. Wow. And then I saw him go from warm to cold. He died right there.
Wow.
Right there. And they called 911. The ambulance came. they're giving him CPR and everything their way, and they're just like, he's gone. And I was like, what if I would have got here, an hour before? And usually we room together. Mm-hmm. We didn't room together. And they were like, no, they said he had seen something already. He would have been gone no matter what. I'm like what? Mm-hmm. So now I'm sitting here with my brother dying basically in my arms, going, I was in shock. I was like in shock. And then I had to go back to my room and call people. I'm like, well, I didn't know who to call.
Who did you call?
I'm like, who do I call? I think I called home. I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh my God. So I called Fit Finley.
Why Fit and not Dean or Chris?
Well, I didn't want to wake up Chris. Fit was an agent.
Yeah.
So I want him to get the word to.
Wait a minute now. Wait a minute. You didn't want to wake up Chris, but you all had an agreement to meet at 8 a.m.? To meet at 8 a.m. and work out in the gym, but you don't want to wake up Chris? That's pretty weird right there. It just, things like that. It doesn't add up, and it makes no sense. And then you add in the fact that who was one of the last people Chris Benoit talked to? None other than Chavo Guerrero. Now, how does this man constantly find himself in these situations? That's something that is very suspicious, in my opinion. Very weird that Chavo was the last person to see Eddie, and Chavo was over at Chris Benoit's house the weekend before he dies. And none of this is questioned. You can't question that. Well, what are you saying, Chris, that Chavo had something to do with it? I'm not saying he killed nobody. What I'm saying is it's a very strange pattern there. And to not even be able to acknowledge it, I think is a failure on many people's parts. But like I'm saying here, it seems like the story changes a little bit here and there. It seems like there are problems with it. The guy writing up the story on that article I showed you said that Eddie missed a 7 o'clock wake up call. Well, so then they're calling Chavo at the same time. They're calling Chavo at the same exact time. Well, he was rounding it up. Well, that makes it even worse then. If they called him at 7:10, 7:15, 7:20, then that pushes back the time of when he would be wanting to call somebody. And to say, I didn't want to wake Chris. Well, again, you agreed to meet the guy at the gym at 8 o'clock. So why are you concerned about waking him up? And of course, WWE was quick to jump on it because, again, that night they were doing a show. So they jumped right on it. They did a tribute show for Eddie. Yeah, they did a tribute show for Eddie, which was very nice, obviously. It was a very touching and emotional thing to see as someone who grew up and watched Eddie Guerrero wrestle. It was kind of hard to watch some of these grown men crying and visibly upset over the loss of one of their best friends. It wasn't an easy thing to see. And for them, it wasn't an easy thing to go through. So, you sympathize. But what would happen after all that settled down? About 2-3 months after, what they started to do was develop another storyline. All right, so this is another clip I'll have to edit out because obviously I cannot show it. WWE will flag it. But this is about 2 months, like I said, 2-3 months after Eddie had passed. Rey Mysterio won the Royal Rumble. Before Eddie even died, they had Eddie and Rey in a storyline about Dominic being Eddie's son. And WWE, they do this. They have a real habit when you dig in and you look into the shit they do, the stuff they do, they've got a real bad habit of repeating themselves. For example, when Brian Pillman died, the tasteless comments and questions from Vince McMahon to Brian Pillman's widow, it's like if you wanted to pay the woman, you could have come up with a better way to do that. You didn't have to go on and be so trashy. But that's in Vince McMahon's nature. That's who he is. When Owen Hart died, they didn't have to keep the show going. But instead, they thought they were in a position to speak for Owen. Owen would have wanted the show to continue. Well, Bret Hart comes out and says, no, my brother wouldn't have wanted the show to continue. And as I've brought up many times, I'm pretty sure as Owen's falling to his death, he's not thinking, God, I sure hope the show goes on. I couldn't imagine falling 85 feet like that, landing in the ring the way Owen did. And the audacity for my employer to not even have enough respect for me, for all the hours upon hours upon hours, days, years, everything I put into that company, not even have the respect to stop the show for me. And then when you look in the details of that, it looks like there was foul play. It really looks strange. Then you listen to the guy that was with Owen, and he said Vince threatened to fire Owen if he didn't show up to the arena because Owen took a break, went to eat, said he wasn't doing it, told his wife he wasn't doing it, got threatened with his job, and ended up dead. When you look at a lot of these things where the wrestlers die while they're working for the company, or even like with Chyna when she wasn't working for the company and they wanted to ignore her all those years, and Triple H came up with the excuse, well, you know, because Chyna's last year, she was basically begging to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Well, you know, we can't induct her because she's did porn. It's like, what about Sunny? She literally just used your Hall of Fame ring, her Hall of Fame ring, to promote her pornography that she did. Y'all didn't kick her out of the Hall of Fame. Well, she's already in there. Well, then there you go. So don't use that excuse. But Chyna begged, went up to Triple H at Roddy Piper's funeral to see about being put in the Hall of Fame. She ends up dead. WWE didn't have nothing really to say about her before then. The day she dies, there they are, ka-ching, 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 to profit off of her death with videos of her all over their YouTube channel. And you better believe they made a profit off of that. It's sick, it's twisted, but this is the company we're dealing with. This is the sick people that we are dealing with. So when Randy Orton said to Rey Mysterio, oh, you're looking up at heaven like Eddie's helping you, like Eddie's up there in heaven. No, he's down there in hell. 2-3 months after the man died, y'all are pulling that, like y'all are really saying that. It takes a piece of garbage to come up with anything like that. But this is how Vince McMahon's mind works. This is how he thinks about the dead. He doesn't have respect for the dead. So, I'll say that because it's a common theme in WWE. And this all leads to really, truly the thing about Benoit. But in order to get there, we have to go through several things first. And in the next episode, we're going to get to Kevin Sullivan. Because believe it or not, I know a lot of people think Kevin Sullivan had nothing to do with it based off the fact he says he didn't. But if that's the case, if he's so innocent, I'd love for people to explain to me why I have caught him lying, or I have caught someone else contradicting the things that he has said multiple times. And that's what I'll leave you with. For episode 2, you're going to see a lot of lies from Kevin Sullivan. You're going to see him saying things that just aren't true. And so if he's willing to lie about that, you really have to wonder what all else is he willing to lie about. With that being said, I want to thank y'all for watching this episode. Y'all be sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you later.